topic of today is the book of Samuel. We are up to chapter 24. We did last week, we did chapter 23. And we mentioned about how David is running away from Shaul HaMelech, King Saul. And David had a number of challenging situations. One was he was in a city called Keilah. He even saved these people, the people of Keilah, from the Plishtim, from the nation that was against the Jewish people at the time. And David and his men fought the Plishtim and saved the Jewish people. But at the same time, he couldn't stay in Keilah. And he knew that he couldn't stay there only after he asked the Urim V'Tumim. He had the Yasser, the son of Achimelech, he had the Kohen Gadol, asked the Urim V'Tumim if he should stay. Well, he asked two questions. And the two questions that he asked was, will the inhabitants of Keilah give me over? And the other question he asked was, will Shaul come after me? And the interesting thing is that the order in which he asked these questions was really it really should have been the opposite. First, he should find out if Shaul is going to pursue him, and then if Shaul is going to pursue him, then he should find out if the people of Keilah are going to give him over to Shaul. So the Gemara looks at this verse and says, I mean, in addition to the verse afterwards, it says, what is the answer actually? What is the answer? So the answer that he gets is, I'm going to read it to you inside. And Hashem said that he will come down. So Hashem answered the second question. So the next verse said, David then said, so will the inhabitants of Keilah give me over? And then Hashem replies, they will give you over. So look at what happened here. David asked two questions. God answers the second one. So then David repeats the first question and God answers the first question. So the Gemara understands that there's something surprising about this. And the Gemara concludes that we see how you're supposed to ask questions of the Urim V'Tumim. Number one, you're only supposed to ask one question at a time. Number two, you're supposed to ask questions in the right order. And if you ask two questions, God will normally answer the first one. Unless you ask them in the wrong order, then God will answer the second one first. So these are some of the things we learned from these verses that we just read last week. And another thing that we learned was the verse tells us in the last verse that we read, verse 28, it says, Shaul returned from chasing after David and went towards the Plishtim. This is why that place is called the Rock of Division, Selah HaMachlokes. So here, again, we're continuing the story. Shaul is king, and he is paranoid of David, who is his son-in-law. And he's also going to be the one who's going to take over the kingship of the Jewish people. And Shaul is paranoid, and Shaul is trying to kill David, and he almost got him surrounded. This was this story over here where he had him surrounded. And this is the people of Ziph even were helping David. We mentioned the Psalm 54, where it mentions in Psalm 54 that this is the Bevoi Hazifim, when the Ziphites came and said to Shaul, "Behold, David is hiding among us." So David is right there. They've got him, and Shaul is Shaul is they're all excited that the people are helping Shaul find him, and the Ziphites, even though they're from the tribe of Judah, which you would think they would want to help David because he's from their tribe, but they are helping out Shaul, and it seems like they just about have David surrounded. They're all set, and right then, a messenger came to Shaul saying, "Hurry and go, because the Plishtim have spread out over the land." So here we've got a fight where Shaul has to decide what he's going to do. Is he going to fight his enemy from within or his enemy from without? He's got David, who he thinks is his enemy from within. And then he's got the Plishtim, who have started a fight, which is the enemy from without. And Shaul is going to have to make this decision, make the call of what to do now. He almost has David all set. He's got him pretty much there. Now, a few things should be mentioned about this story, but we didn't have time last week. One of them is that who came to tell Shaul, "Hurry up, the Plishtim are fighting us"? Who came who actually ended up saving David? Who was that? So Rashi tells us a malach mamish. It was a real angel. This was an angel sent from God. This was not just a person. The Metzudas David, the other commentary, seems to imply that it might have just been a regular, a person who's involved in security. But we do see that there is an element here of possibly it was definitely a salvation of God. This was and possibly even through an angel, that an angel came and was sent by God to save David from being killed. Now, there is a medrash that says that David HaMelech, when he was surrounded, he recited a certain verse in Tehillim. And the verse goes like this, verse 1 in chapter 116. It's a verse that we say in the Hallel, and it's actually today's portion of Tehillim. And what is that? The verse goes, Ani omarti b'chafzi, I said in my haste. And this is where you look at chapter in your books of Shmuel. If you look in chapter 23, verse 26, you see the same word, nechpaz. David was nechpaz. He was hurrying to run away, trying to find a way out of being surrounded. And this is this verse in chapter 116 of Tehillim that David says, Ani omarti b'chafzi, I said in my haste, kol ha'adam kozev, everyone is deceitful. Now, who was David referring to when he said everyone is deceitful? And the Medrash says that David was saying, not only is this, terrible that Shaul is chasing after him and Doeg is spreading lies about him and so on, but he's even saying that where is Samuel, the prophet? Where is the promise that Samuel made that I'm supposed to be king? Where is that promise? I'm trapped by Shaul. I'm about to get killed. They basically surrounded me. And it says David is nechpaz. He's trying to figure out a way to get out of this. And it seems like he's surrounded. And it says, and David calls out to Hashem, Ani omarti b'chavsi, I said in my haste, everyone is deceitful. He's talking even about Shmuel Hanabi, Samuel the prophet. And he's saying, Samuel promised that I'm going to reign. I'm going to be the king of Israel. Where is that promise? He was deceitful. He anointed me. And where did that promise go? So this God was upset about. And because of this, God sent an angel to reveal David's whereabouts to Shaul. So Shaul now knows exactly where Shmuel is. He'll just have to travel there to kill him. And right after that, we have the story of an angel heading to David. I'm sorry, another angel heading to Shaul, telling him that the Plishtim are fighting you. So what's happening here is David does something slightly wrong where he's questioning the prophet Shmuel, and he says, and this is the psalm that we say in the Hallel prayers. Ani amarti b'chavsi kol ha'adam kaizev, everyone is deceitful. He's questioning even Shmuel the prophet. Where is that promise? And so he deserved to be punished at this time, and his punishment was that Shaul now knows his whereabouts. However, right after that punishment is fulfilled, so to speak, God makes room for him to be saved, meaning that's enough. He deserved a little punishment, but that was good enough. And now, of course, David being in such a situation where he's in such a dangerous situation, I guess that was enough of a punishment for David. And now Shaul gets this message that he's got a war going on with the Plishtim. He's got to do something about it. Now, the verse then says that David Shaul returned from running after David, and he went towards the Plishtim, and therefore they called this place the Rock of Divisions. And we didn't explain really, what does it mean, the Rock of Divisions? And this is the end of chapter 23, the last few words. And so the Rock of Divisions over here, the Radak has a number of interpretations. One of them is that they separated. Shaul and David separated. Shaul went to deal with the Plishtim army, and David was able to escape. Another interpretation is the interpretation that Shaul had to decide. He had two options in front of him, and he wasn't sure which one to choose. Should he deal with his external enemy or his internal enemy? And this was the Selah HaMachlokas. They called that place the Rock of Divisions because he had an internal heartache, decision-making, that he had to make this decision. There must be some better term for this, but he had some internal conflict of which option to choose. Should he go after David, or should he go after the Plishtim? And then there is another interpretation that it means the people. Shaul's people gave their ideas. Some of them said, "What do you mean? We got David right here. Let's kill him." And others said, "What are you talking about? We got our enemy, for the outside enemy. How could we choose that?" So some say it's not Shaul himself's division. It was the division, the fighting between his advisors and his people, his war commanders, his army commanders. Now, there is another interpretation, and that is that whenever David came to this area in the future, he and any of the people that were with him at this time, when they were traveling to fight a war, they would separate from their army to say a blessing of praise to Hashem. Because when a miracle happens for someone, you're supposed to thank Hashem for the miracle. And there's a bracha that you say. Like, for example, I was once driving with my family and the car spun around on the 95. It was a very big miracle. And it was like 7:30 at night. Could have easily been, there were cars around us. Miraculously, we did a whole 360 and we were able to continue driving. So whenever I drive by that area, I say a blessing, thanking Hashem for the miracle that God did. So David made a blessing. This was a big miracle that happened for David, that he was surrounded by Shaul and his people. So it says whenever he was with his group, that he would separate from his army and him and any of the people that were with him during this miracle, and they would always praise Hashem. Baruch she'asa lanu nes b'makom hazeh, blessed is Hashem who made a miracle for us in this place. And so that's the blessing that David would say, and that's why it's called the Selah HaMachlokos, the rock of division, because David, whenever he passed by this place, him and any of his people, they would separate from their army and go down from their horse and fall on their face and recite this bracha. Yes, David.
Yeah, I'm just seeing in verse 27 where whether it's a messenger or an angel, and he comes to Saul and says, "Make haste and come." So in the Me'am Lo'ez, he gives, I guess, sort of a proof that it's an angel, because a human would have just said to the king, "The Philistines are raiding the land." He wouldn't have had the chutzpah to say to the king, come, make haste and come. A human wouldn't have done that, and only an angel would speak to the king like that.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Great. So the next chapter, we're up to chapter 24. And here we mentioned that in this situation, David is now like wandering with his people, and they don't know really where to hide. They don't have any official place. So chapter 24, verse 1, David ascended from there and dwelt in the strongholds of Ein Gedi. Ein Gedi is like right near the Dead Sea, if anyone's been to Israel. So David ascended from there, dwelt in the strongholds of Ein Gedi. And in the Hebrew, it says B'midbar Ein Gedi, which means the desert of Ein Gedi. And the verse number 2, when Shaul returned from chasing after the Plishtim, people told him, saying, "Behold, David is in the wilderness." Actually, verse 1 does mention Mitzodei Ein Gedi, which means the strongholds of Ein Gedi. The strongholds of Ein Gedi. In verse 2 says the wilderness, as I mentioned, the wilderness of Ein Gedi. It uses both terms, and the understanding is that these are natural strongholds. They're not man-made. They're natural, maybe high rocks, big rocks and cliffs. And it was basically a good hiding place for David and his men. So verse number 3, so Shaul took 3,000 chosen men from all of Israel, went to seek David and his men over the rocks of the wild goats. Surei Hayaelim. Now, what does that mean? The rocks of the wild goats. So what this means is that this was an area where it was hard to walk, but it was an area where the wild goats were able to get to. It was easy for the wild goats to get to, so therefore calls it the Surei Hayaelim. And so he went to look for David over there. He figured probably that's where David is hiding. Now he came to sheep enclosures and along the road, and there was a cave there where Shaul entered to relieve himself. David and his men were sitting at the far end of the cave. So you have David and his men in this cave, and Shaul, who none other than Shaul, who's trying to kill David, comes into the cave, and he comes in there to relieve himself. So this is a real opportune time for David to get rid of Shaul and have no more problems in life. Because if he gets rid of Shaul, he's going to be a free man, at least maybe. And Shaul is trying to kill him. And this would be, you would think, a perfect opportunity. And David had no problem. You know, it wasn't hard for him to kill. You know, he's killed many of the enemies. He was in wars, and so David could have easily just killed Shaul. And David's men over here said to him, "Behold, look at this divine providence. Look at what a great miracle God has given." David's men said to him, "Behold, this is the day which Hashem said to you, behold, I am delivering your enemy into your hand. You may do to him as you please." So David arose and stealthily cut off a corner of Shaul's robe. This is a very famous story. Shaul cuts off a corner of Shaul's robe. Knaf Hami'il.
David did.
What did you say, Ben?
David cut off.
David. What did I say?
David cut off.
David cut off. I don't know what I said. I said Shaul cut off? Okay. Sorry. Correct. Thank you for correcting me. David cut off a corner of Shaul's robe. Now, what is this referring to? This is the day which Hashem said to you. We don't find this prophecy anywhere, but we understand from these words that there must have been some type of a prophecy that either Shmuel had told David or one of the other prophets, God, Nasan, there were a few other prophets that possibly gave David a prophecy saying that, behold, I will give you oivecha biyadecha, your enemies in your hand, and you will do as is good in your eyes. So there is some type of a prophecy. So there's some prophecy that we don't know necessarily who gave this prophecy to David, but David, it was a known prophecy to David and his followers that there was a prophecy that said the enemy is going to be given to into David's hand. Now, David's followers said, this is what the prophecy is referring to. Here is this is the exact scenario. Look at what Hashem has done. He made Shaul come and relieve himself right here in this cave, and we got him. We can easily we got him trapped over here. Now, David is not comfortable doing this for some reason, and instead he cuts the corner of his garment. And right afterwards, it says, afterwards, however, David's conscience troubled him for having cut off the corner of Shaul's garment. So he initially he did it, and then he feels bad about doing that. Now, he feels bad, but his people are really upset. They want him to kill Shaul. And he said to his men, it would be sacrilegious before Hashem for me to do this thing to my Lord, the anointed of Hashem, to send forth my hand against him, for he is the anointed of Hashem. So David says this would not be appropriate for me to kill him. He's the king. He's the anointed one of Hashem. And what that means is that he really has the right to kill him because Shaul is trying to kill David. So David has the right to kill him as self-defense. But David is not interested in doing this. He decided against it. And one of the commentaries tells us that there are two reasons why he decided against it. One is what the verse says, he's the anointed one of Hashem. And the other one is that the future stability of the nation would be broken if he assassinated the king. So he decided against it. Now, there is also a concept that it mentions that David saw the holiness of Shaul. And what did he see? He had mercy on him. And we'll see this in verse 11. It says that he had mercy on Shaul and he didn't kill him. And it had to do with the fact that Shaul was modest in the way he relieved himself, and David saw that he had certain holiness and purity to him, and David felt that Shaul had a certain righteousness to him, and he should not be harmed. Yes, let's see. We have Robert. You're muted, Robert.
I got it. I find it interesting. I'm reading Sepharia while we're going through this, and from what I see now, the word Lord is used with two different interpretations. With Saul being Lord in small letters, and then Hashem as Lord in the capital letters. So clearly there's a recognition by David that Shaul is his temporal Lord, who is the anointed one by Hashem, who is the one and only Lord. So that's my interpretation of, again, some of the duality of definition, let's say, that he recognizes it. Yeah.
Could you read the verse and just tell us which one is capitalized and which one is lowercase?
So what I'm reading is, let's see, it is
verse 7.
All right, I'm starting at verse 11.
Oh, okay.
All right, that the Lord, all capitals. It says, you can see for yourself now that the Lord, all capitals, delivered you into my hands in the cave today. And though I was urged to kill you, I showed you pity, for I said, I will not raise my hand against my Lord, small letters, since he is the Lord's capital letters anointed.
Uh-huh. So thank you. Yeah. So if you look in verse 11, one of the interesting things is Adon means master.
Okay.
Lord is another word for master. It
Okay.
also is the term used when we refer to Hashem. The way we say Hashem's name is from
Right.
that root word Adon. We say Baruch Atah, and then we say and Do, and then Noi. So it's the same word Adon. It's from the word master, and they're using the word Lord, and that word could mean a Lord, as in a master, or it could mean, and the same thing is in the verse. The verse uses the word Adon, referring to Shaul, and it also uses the name Hashem, which they're translating as Lord.
Right.
It could say God, but they chose to use the word Lord. But it actually would have been maybe better if they would have used the word God, because the actual writing in the Hebrew is the Yud Hey, the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey, which should be translated probably as God, but that's okay. So that's why you're seeing that Lord capital and Lord lowercase, but it's based on the fact that the word Adon just literally just means master. Sometimes it refers to God, sometimes not. Okay, Ben.
Yeah, I wanted to say there is David, as far as I know, is the greatest tactician in war. He knew how to kill a lion, he knew how to kill a bear, he knew how to kill Goliath, he knows how to handle Shaul up to now. He knows his people are inside a cave. Shaul's people are outside, watching the entrance to the cave. He knows if his people start coming out the cave, they'll kill them one at a time. They're not going to wait till all of them are out and then start fighting them. So he feels it's not the time to do it.
So you're looking for some rational reason
it's not a safe time to kill Shaul, because his people.
So you're saying some rational reason why he's not killing him?
Because Shaul's people will take revenge.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. It's pure, self-preservation.
Uh-huh. And you fought in an army.
Get his people out of the cave fast enough to fight Shaul's people.
Uh-huh. And you fought in the Israeli army, so you know these things?
But that's maybe a third reason.
Did you? I'm just wondering. You should preface this statement.
That's not the point.
Were you in the Tzahal? Uh-huh.
No, I was in the Air Force. I was not.
The Air Force. Uh-huh.
Yes, but I was in the Air Force.
You got to preface with
in
Ben,
when you say such a statement,
when you say such a statement, preface it with your, you have the credentials to, to say such a thing.
Yeah, but I don't want to tell you a false thing. I was not involved in fighting.
Right.
Personal fighting.
All I can say is that as much as we all know here on this Zoom, David and his men had more experience probably than all of us put together. And his men knew exactly how to fight. And they felt that this was the appropriate time to kill Shaul. They were not afraid of any of his people. So I guess they knew what they were saying, and they could have killed him. And David, in his righteousness, in his holiness, in his purity of heart, he decided not to. In his self-control, decided not to. That's the understanding, at least that I see from this. But I hear what you're saying, and I can't argue with you as a modern day, in the modern day fighting. Maybe you have a point. I don't know. Okay, let's see. We have some other questions here. Ezra?
And Anna.
And Anna has a question. Okay, Anna. I'm sorry. Yes, Anna. I guess you prefer.
I believe that after Saul would be killed, it's a good possibility that his army would be completely lost and not would have a leader. That's why maybe the numbers will not make such a big difference. But David showed so many times that morals are very important for him. And he believed that his actions were so morally right. He never had anything against the king. And just to take advantage of this situation would not be morally right. That's what I think would really was a kind of reason for his decision not to do it.
And why would it not be morally right? What is specific morale?
Because again, he was a strong believer. He knew that if Saul was, was put as on a position to be a king, that it was some kind of reason for him to be in this particular situation. And David never wanted to kill him. He never wanted to take his place. He just, so far, he was trying to prove his innocence, to prove that it was not his intentions. That's why if he escaped so many different things before, where his life was in danger and he did not take advantage of a wrong way of doing things, I believe just to take the situation where a person accidentally end up in your cave would not be morally right. That's why he's saying that, that Hashem did not really put me in a place to kill. It's not my role. It's not my position. Plus, I don't feel good to do it because it's not, I have never seen this sign from Hashem that that's what I'm supposed to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, that's well said. I could see that, I don't blame his followers for saying this is morally right, because after all, David's out to kill, Shaul is out to kill them. So in a certain sense, you could say they're acting beyond morality. They're going above the letter of morality. Morality might say you could kill him, and they're acting in their high level of morality or beyond maybe the letter of morality and acting as righteous people. Angels almost would act because they're acting selfless and putting their life on the line to act this way in self-control. But the idea that you're saying, sure, sounds right. Very good. Very well said, Anna. Yes, Ezra.
I will say that what Ben said is probably correct. And I can say it because I was in the military.
So the verses imply like, why would his people have told him to kill Shaul? What did they have in mind? Were they not so knowledgeable?
It's a target of opportunity. He's there. You kill him, perhaps what will happen is his men will disperse because the king is no longer there. So therefore, when the head is gone, then you don't have anybody to lead you. Since the king was the one who was taking these men specifically for the purpose of killing David. So if the king is no longer there, the reason for them to be there is no longer a viable reason.
So you're saying from the logic of the soldiers, there might be room to say that they will live, but David had like more global long-term concern that they might all die as well. There's the other flip side of the coin, and therefore he felt that this would not be a smart idea.
They, for all intents and purposes, they are trapped. They're inside the cave. So all the people, all of Shaul's men can do is find brush or whatever it is, throw it and stick it in in the front of the cave and then light it. And all the men will be asphyxiated as a possibility. So if you follow what Ben's logic is, he doesn't want to put his men at risk. He doesn't
There's
want
a
to
potential.
and he doesn't even want to have Shaul's men know that his men are there as well. So if he comes out by himself and only by himself, then his men still escape. Especially if he were to be killed, all right, then Shaul and his men would say, okay, we have the perpetrator, he's dead, and we've accomplished our task. And so looking after the other men it's sort of a reverse situation that I had mentioned before, because David's men would then be dispirited, would be because their leader is gone, and so they would disband once they come out of the cave, after Shaul and his men are gone. So it's why did David come out by himself? The words tell us why he came out, but from a standpoint of saving his people, he's acting like a shepherd. He's making sure that his people, or his sheep, his flock, his men
Are safe,
are not harmed.
right? But the only thing is, the verse does not imply that. The verse says that he said the reason of maybe we didn't say it yet, but in he did not permit them to rise up against Shaul, and it says it would be sacrilegious before Hashem for me to do this thing to my Lord, the anointed of Hashem. We're in verse 7. To send
I understand that, Rabbi. I understand that, and I agree with you.
So he says the reason.
Yeah, Vaishasa, is it's the same terminology that's used when you're in the Torah in describing an animal with a split hoof. So the Vaishasa, which is also how Rashi translates it, meaning that he separated his men and he pushed them off with words, basically saying, God anointed this individual. There's a reason why he's where he is. We can't take any kind of action against him, period.
So what was the main reason? Was it because you're saying it's dangerous? Or was it because he felt this is the person Hashem? Was it his moral or beyond moral laws that he went by? Which one was it? Are you saying it's logical, or are you saying he's following this reason that it says in verse 7?
I think it's both. I think he's trying to save his men, number one, but he also knows that Hashem anointed and put Shaul there for a reason. So therefore, it's not his job to take him out.
So you're saying it wasn't an easy fix. It wasn't a definite fix. It would have been a potential fix. And but the main reason he's not doing it is because this is not appropriate. And this is, but it's also not a definite fix either. But it doesn't mention that because that's like a question. That's a little it's possible, possibly not. It's unclear what would have happened. No one knows the future. It wasn't a perfect scenario, but it would have been maybe an idea to do. But ultimately, he didn't do it because of the reason it says in verse 7. Is that more or less how you're seeing it?
I think it's probably both.
50-50. Okay. All right. Well, okay. Susan.
I think the timing was way off. That David, it was too easy, way too easy, and David did not want to make do a murder.
So you're not allowed, really? You're not allowed to murder someone who's about to kill you?
The thing is that he knew
you're not allowed to do things that's easy.
The king was crazy, and he knew the king was getting misinformation from him, from his people. But he didn't want to take advantage of the situation in that way. That wouldn't have been moral.
You got to save yourself, and if it's an easy way to save yourself, you're not allowed to do it.
I didn't say that. I'm saying that in this case, I feel like the timing was wrong, and David felt
Timing?
the
Well,
timing. Yes.
Why could timing be wrong? You got to save your life with timing. The first thing you do is save your life.
Yeah, but he had already.
That's my timing.
What?
Rabbi, did God give David permission to kill Shaul?
I think so. The fact that he says that you're allowed to kill someone in self-defense gave him permission. Logically,
I think if anything, what God is basically telling David each and every time is these are the things that you can do to save yourself. But he doesn't. Saving yourself doesn't mean to kill the other guy. Right. It just means saving yourself.
There is a law in Judaism.
I know what the law is. It's the law of Rodef. Fine, I understand that. Okay, but here I think these are circumstances. You know, if it's between me and another guy who's on the same level as me, that's one thing. But here we're talking about a king.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I look at it as he went beyond the norm with his high level of righteousness, but I wouldn't have been surprised. In other words, if he would have killed him, you know, he had a reason according to Jewish law that it wouldn't have been wrong. Not necessarily was it the best option. Obviously, what he did was a much better option. He let him live. But I don't know that you could say that he would have been wrong had he done this. There is a law that allows someone to kill someone in self-defense. He went beyond the letter of the law. At least that's the way I see it. But if you want to learn differently, that's okay. I'll just tell you that if your life is ever, God forbid, in danger, make sure to kill the enemy. Shoot the enemy.
Someone comes to kill you, you kill him first. I know that law very well.
You know, don't it's rare that you'll have a situation that there's an excuse, that there's an exception to that rule. Reuven, you wanted to say something.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think there was this whole fight was because Shaul HaMelech was crazy. I mean, his people didn't hate David HaMelech. They would have killed him if he had ordered them to or allowed them to, but they were fellow Jews. And likewise, I think David's people had nothing against Shaul, except that he was trying to kill their leader. So it's not like, you know, the Israelites fighting the Plishtim. The Plishtim wanted to kill the Israelites and would have been more than happy to do it. If either one of them, either Shaul HaMelech or David HaMelech, had been killed, one but the other, I think the two groups of people would not have engaged in any further combat. The conflict is over. This was a personal vendetta of Shaul HaMelech against David, and
so let me cut you off, Reuven. So let me just cut you off. So there's two things going on here. Number one, we're having a debate and discussing if David would have been successful had he killed Shaul. Would that have ended the conflict? And number one, what you're saying is it probably would have ended because that was what it was all about. It was Shaul's personal issue, and that probably would have ended things. So even though they're in a dangerous situation, being stuck in this cave, but if Shaul's life was over, it probably would have ended the fight there because they're both Jews. And the other thing that you're saying is that David was not running to do the self-defense option of killing because we're dealing with two Jews. So these are the 2 points that you're touching, both things that we've been discussing here at the class in the last 5-10 minutes.
Yes, and David had nothing against Shaul HaMelech. He was perfectly willing to let him remain king for as long as Hashem wanted him to be king.
Right. Well, but that's very well said. Yes, Ruvain. Everything you said sounds reasonable, and that's a good point that Ruvain is adding. That is that we're dealing with Jews fighting Jews here, so we got to keep that in mind. So even though there is self-defense, but as much as important as self-defense is, it becomes very complicated when the self-defense option is someone who you really want to live. You really want them to, and they do have some mental health issue as well. Yes, David. Thank you, Ruben.
On verse 3, where Shaul enters the cave, in the commentary in Me'am Lo'ez, he explains the story of the spider and the spider web in that section there. Do you want me to say that, or
yeah, say it? Yeah.
He's muted. I can't hear anything.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. Okay. So it says, according to some, the verse 3 emphasizes that the cave was along the road to teach that despite the convenience as a hiding place, Saul did not think to look there for David. In his commentary to Psalm 57, verse 3, Yonasan ben Uziel says, David compiled this verse to commemorate his miraculous escape from Shaul. He explains there that a spider had spun a web over the entrance to the cave after David and his men entered. When Saul saw the unbroken web, he saw no reason to suspect that anyone else was inside the cave.
Yes, famous Medrash. Thank you so much for mentioning that. Yeah. So Psalm number 57 in Tehillim, there are really two Psalms, Psalm 142 as well. Psalm 57 and Psalm 142, both of these are David composed hiding from Shaul in the cave, and Psalm 142 is when he cut off the garment, corner of the garment, to prove that he could have killed him, and which we'll soon see in the verses. But maybe we'll go through these Psalms next week. I don't want to take up any more time. We've had a very some interesting discussions, and again, this is what we're learning, to be able to discuss these matters, and maybe we'll see different points of how these ideas develop further. So let's continue. We're going to continue from verse 8. And David sundered his men with rhetoric and did not permit them to rise up against Shaul. Then Shaul rose up from the cave and continued on the way. And so what happened here was, so he did cut off this corner of the garment, and one of the commentaries explains that David wasn't sure what to do, and the appropriate thing for someone righteous like David was to see how he feels after he starts heading in one direction. So he possibly was considering to kill Shaul, and he even started by cutting his garment. And once he cut a little of it, instead of feeling good with what he was doing, he felt like this is wrong. And therefore, he abandoned that idea to kill Shaul. But this is not a simple thing. You have to keep in mind that his life and the life of all of his people are at stake, his family and his people. So it wasn't a simple decision, but he chose to control his desire to save his life and the life of his people. And because this is the anointed one of Hashem, And ultimately, he didn't go any further. Instead, he even regretted it. Now, David did not even let his people do this. And Shaul rose up and went on his way. And now we're continuing in verse 9. After that, David arose and stepped out of the cave, calling after Shaul, saying, "My lord, the king." And Shaul looked behind him. And he uses the word Adoni, my lord, my master, showing respect. And Shaul looked, and David bowed down, apayim arza, his face on the ground. Vayishtachu, and he prostrated himself. And David said to Shaul, "Why do you listen to the words of someone who says, 'Behold, David seeks to harm you'?" And who is that referring to? Doeg, the famous Doeg. Why are you listening to the gossip that Doeg is feeding you with? Yes, Julian.
Rabbi, I just want to ask you, when the Jews didn't kill all the Amalekites, they were told to wipe everyone out, and they left some alive, and they were punished. Yet David was ordered to do what he wanted with Saul, but there was no repercussion. Is there a difference there?
Now, what are you referring to, David with Shaul?
Well, when David didn't carry out the request by Hashem that he can do what he likes with Saul, David suffered no repercussion. But when the Amalekites weren't wiped out, they suffered repercussions, the nation.
That's an interesting question Julian brings up. And that is that if you look in verse 5, where it says that there was some type of a prophecy where David he can do whatever he wants, whatever's good in his eyes, and to his enemies. And David's followers understood that that refers to Shaul. So the question is that can you compare that to the story where Shaul was supposed to kill the Amalekites? Very interesting, Julian. Thank you for bringing up that. It's an interesting thought. Now, I see a big difference, a huge difference, and that is that Shaul was told directly what to do. And verse 5 gives him the right to do things, but does not tell him you have an obligation to destroy. Doesn't tell him that. It says you do whatever's right in your eyes. So it really, I see that as a huge difference. Another interesting difference is, how did David interpret that prophecy? His followers interpreted it to mean that it's referring to Shaul. You should kill Shaul. However, David didn't interpret it that way. David said, this must be referring to when I become king, I'm going to have a lot of enemies. And God is giving me a blessing to annihilate my enemies. So David saw it as a term referring to the future enemies of the, numerous enemies, and David's followers saw it as referring to Shaul. Now, what's really interesting is, if you look at the word is, there's a way to read it and a way that it's spelled. And the way it's spelled, we're in verse 5, going back to verse 5, is the Hebrew word oivecha. Now, oivecha is spelled with 2-letter yuds, which means plural. But the way it's read it's read oyivcha. Oyivcha means singular, that he's being given the right to kill. I'm giving in your hand your enemy. So the question here is this referring to a plural statement, which would probably imply a general idea about giving over the enemies into David's hand, and it's talking about in general all the enemies? Or is it specifically talking about one enemy? So the followers of David saw the main way of reading it is the way it's read, oyivcha, and David saw it and emphasized the fact that it's spelled oivecha. And or maybe to word this differently, the way it's spelled and the way it's read is hinting to, maybe this is a better way of interpreting this, the way it's spelled is hinting to the way David understood it, and the way it's read is hinting to the way his followers understood it. So the verse is giving us an understanding of how they were arguing in the meaning of this prophecy. Was it a prophecy meant to talk about the general enemies of David, or was it talking about one specific enemy, which the verse implies and hints to us these two ways of understanding this prophecy? So that really adds a new dimension to the whole discussion. Thank you, Julian, for bringing that up. Yes, Ben. Ben.
I want to say the way it's spelled with the shva under the bet, there is a shva.
That's not the way it's
not
spelled.
It's a ray or segol.
That's not the way it's spelled.
It's oivecha.
Wrong already. Oivecha, the way it's spelled is without vowels.
That's what I see.
The way it's spelled is just look at the letters. The way it's read, you can tell me the vowels. The way it's spelled, you got to tell me the letters.
Oh, the one okay, the way it's read in singular.
Yeah.
Oivecha.
Oyivcha, oyivcha.
So it's not in plural.
Correct.
Oivecha
is plural.
That would be different.
Correct.
So you say in the Torah, the Torah is without the nikud.
No, but wait a minute. But this is,
Okay,
if you read, if this was read at all, it would be read as a haftarah. So there would be nikudim there. So that's
but
not
the way it's read is oyivcha, not oivecha.
Yeah.
If you're reading it the way it's read, the kra in the ksiv, there's the kra the way it's read, and that's oyivcha. The way it's written, even if you're going to read it from a haftarah, the way it'll be written, if you have a klaf, if you have it written on a scroll, it would be spelled with the two-letter yuds, but you read it oyivcha. So it's hinting to these two interpretations, which is basically the debate of how David and his followers understood this. But bottom line is, even if you understand it to be that I am giving him into your hand, you will do to him as is good in your eyes, it's not a clear command to go and kill him. You know, it's very different than the command about in Shmuel's situation with Shaul, Shmuel's command to Shaul. But in any event, that's that answer. I believe that answers your question, Julian. Yes, David.
Yeah, my sefer is a different number. Like this pasuk, this verse about deliver your enemy. In my book, it's verse 4. The first verse is Vayihi Kasher. The second verse is Vayikach.
Why? Why the first verse should be Vayal?
That says 24, 1 and 2, Vayihi Kasher Shav. Shol.
That's 2. That's verse 2, Vayihi. Vayal should be verse 1. It says 1 and 2. It's probably on the same line. Probably on the same line. You have 2 verses.
No, it says
Vayal. Where's Vayal?
Vayal is 23, verse 29. Chapter 23, verse 29.
Oh, very interesting. In any event, that's interesting that they did that. That's
can
not.
Can I give you a personal example about my idea of why not fighting out of a cave?
Just one second.
We used to live about a mile from the border. We used to live. The house was a mile from the border, and the Arabs used to come and steal our cattle, steal our cows at night. But they never went into a house and killed the people, because the people would start screaming, the neighbors might hear you, and then they would get killed. So it's self-preservation. Okay. That's what I said about David. That's why he didn't kill Shaul. You know?
I hear. Okay, David, I just tell you that the way it's divided up into these chapters was not divided by the Jewish people. It was divided by the printers. So it's interesting that yours divides it that way. But in any event, I think the common division is this way, but I haven't looked at numerous versions. But anyway, it seems like a discrepancy of how they divided it. Again, it's the printers who divided up the chapters. In the actual Torah, there isn't the numbering the chapters and which chapter, where the chapters end. Okay, my time is up, I see. I'm sorry for taking up extra time. Have a wonderful evening. Sei gesund.
Thank you.
Thank
Hope
you,
all
Rabbi.
enjoy.
Stay safe, everybody. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.